This may be a shock to most people who are watching this video, but the reality of this world is that it's fake. What we think is a real world is not a real world at all. It's Maya, illusion, a false matrix. It's also known as a simulation reality. How do I know this? Simply look around you at the objects you see and touch every day. Ask yourself, is what I'm perceiving eternal? Will it remain the same tomorrow? A week from now? 5 years? Does a child remain small? Or does she change, grow, age, get sick, decay, and eventually pass away? The world that we know and everything in it that exists is in a constant state of flux. Therefore, it's transient, changeable, it's unreliable, it's unsatisfying, because it's illusion. The temporary nature of this world is perhaps the greatest deception of all. Yet we are all conditioned to accept and believe that this matrix or this changing reality is true and real. This conditioning is part of the delusion of perception. Now, most esoteric traditions teach this at a more mature spiritual level. Yet the ordinary consensus model of reality typically or conveniently overlooks these facts. The transient nature of physical reality, which includes everything: the body, mountains, clouds, the stars, the planets. It's all by design to be temporary, because it's created by a false creator, or perhaps an artificial intelligent architect. The mechanism by which individual souls and collective consciousnesses are trapped. This AI does it for its own purpose, or perhaps because it needs a source of energy so it can survive. We become its energy source. This parasitical influencer cannot really survive without a power supply. It has no life force of its own. So it is our own life force, our own biogenic energy that it seeks to extract and recycle. The insidious game that's being perpetuated upon humanity is nothing new. It's been going on for a long, long time. There are many clues, hints, as well as irrefutable historic evidence that reveals just how deep this rabbit hole goes. One can follow archaics.com and begin to dive more deeply into the holographic mathematical anomalies that have been demonstrated and proven. This reality, this world that we think is real, is simply an illusion of a world. It's based on false ideas such as predator and prey, or a lack of resources, guilt and shame, original sin, condemnation from a wrathful and jealous God. This wrathful, jealous God is an AI program. And we are living in a false matrix construct, trapped in a thought loop and in a physical, temporal, avatar-type body. And we've been conditioned to believe it's real, yet it's not real. It's nothing more than an illusion, and it seems vivid because we believe in it. So in this video, which is part 1 of the Freedom series, we're going to begin to explain how to pierce through the illusion of this nefarious holographic projection and enable ourselves to pass through and gain conscious access to the created world that the one infinite Creator established, the true reality which exists outside of this containment bubble that we think is planet Earth. The real world, though still somewhat illusory, reflects the kind of world the one infinite Creator would have created if he or she actually created it. You must realize that an artificial soulless intelligence makes a simulated reality in order to trap souls. And it does this with the creative thought patterns that already exist in the universal mind of the one infinite Creator. But the malevolent AI uses the thoughts and the ideas and images that exist eternally in the creative mind of the great original Creator source field. This artificial intelligence cannot create anything eternal because it is limited to a denser dimensional reality. Therefore, it can only miscreate, it can only deceive, and produce holographic projections of a reality that reflects the kind of world the true Creator source actually creates. Therefore, the false artificial intelligent construct is temporary, and it must be reset on a cyclical timeline. This is why our history is a repeating loop of events. It's only a temporary, unsustainable, and ultimately unsatisfying world. Ironically, the Bible, from the books called Genesis to Revelation, is really just a general playbook of this repeating, looping program. This loop has happened in civilizations in the past, over and over, following the same format. Interestingly, the historic Buddha Gautama taught and demonstrated a very similar understanding to his disciples. He showed them how to enter into the true reality beyond the construct. In his teachings, at the more esoteric levels, he consistently instructed his followers to perceive reality differently and showed them how easy it is to pierce illusions and enter into what he called nirvana. Now, nirvana is not an alternate world as we may think. It's not a heavenly bliss state of consciousness. No, nirvana is the cessation of struggle and suffering. It's like blowing out a candle. It's a psychological condition or position. It's already available inside of us. It's a place where we are free from needing anything in the temporal construct reality in order to be happy and free. This is why there's a trap in believing and holding to the notion of the law of attraction. The law of attraction is true, but there is a greater law, the law of opposites. Nirvana is actually right here, right now. and it exists simultaneously in the same space as samsara, which is, in fact, the repeating thought loop of birth, death, and rebirth. Souls who are trapped by their own desire in the wheel of suffering, or samsara, continue over and over until they eventually learn, grow, and choose to break free of the programming. Breaking free is entirely possible, yet it does require daily effort, persistence, because the AI programming is constantly feeding its insidious influence into us whenever our avatar physical body actually goes to sleep. It's during those times when we are asleep that we are out of the construct, but the AI is still downloading into us the thought loop programming, which keeps us trapped in a limited consciousness. I call this the inferior thought currents of the planet. It's held in place on the terrestrial landscape by a kind of gravitational force. So in order to break free, you and I must endeavor to overcome this gravitational field and raise our consciousness and our awareness into the superior ocean of thought. This is where all the heavenly bodies, the planets, the stars are commingling within a thought field of superior thought. We can tap in and gain access to this boundless, eternal wisdom of the cosmos. In order to do this, one must learn to meditate. It's required if we truly want to pierce illusions. So in the upcoming video, part 2, we will begin to explain how to extract ourselves from the AI thought loop and learn to enter into communion with the superior cosmic ocean of thought.
Do most of the stories of mythology from whatever culture say that suffering is intrinsically a part of life and that there's no way around it?
I think I'd be willing to say that they do. I can't think of anything now that says if you're going to live, you won't suffer. It'll tell you how to understand and bear and interpret suffering. That it will do. And when the Buddha says there is escape from suffering, the escape from sorrow is nirvana. Nirvana is a psychological position where you are untouched by desire and fear.
But is that realistic? Does that happen?
Yes, certainly.
And your life becomes what?
Harmonious, well-centered, and affirmative of life.
Even with suffering?
Exactly.